Lemongrass is a culinary herb that's surprisingly easy to propagate and grow at home. Lends itself very happily to pots, and if you're interested, stay tuned and I'll show you how to go from something like this to something like that. The first thing to be aware of is there are several varieties of lemongrass. There are two primary ones that you'd be interested in: West Indian lemongrass and East Indian lemongrass. West Indian is the primary one that is used. It's used in most recipes and it's what you're going to pick up in supermarkets most of the time. The East Indian tends to have a prettier look to it, as it's generally grown as an ornamental more often. So for the purposes of growing yourself lemongrass, there's a few different ways you can go. You can try to root something that you've bought from the supermarket. You can buy an already established plant from some nurseries. Also, you can buy them and get them delivered, and you'll usually get something similar to that. It's got some roots on it in a super tube or something along those lines. When you get it from the supermarket, provided it's in really good condition and it's nice and healthy looking, it's usually got a cut off around here. However, you can actually put it in water and there's a very good chance that it will actually start to root. However, if you've got yourself something started, you're probably going to look at something a little bit more like this one. So if you're buying it from a nursery, or if you've got it posted to you from a nursery most likely, you'll get something that'll be similar to this. It'll end up shooting up very similar to this, and they're very easy to take care of from there. They prefer a larger pot though. Now ideally you want to be putting it into a large pot, something like about 30 centimeters wide, 30 centimeters deep, to give it plenty of space to actually grow. As close to that as you can get, better, or you can plant it in the ground as well. Now when you're harvesting it or trying to tidy it up, you can basically pull the whole thing out and gently pull it apart, or you can take off the bits that you want as you need it. Be very careful because the leaves are actually quite sharp and you can give yourself a paper cut basically with them. Now ideally you want a rich, well-drained soil. They like a bit of nutrients, but they also don't like to have soggy feet either. That's one of the tricks. They are very resilient and they're drought tolerant as well. So if you have a tendency to forget about them like I do, they're not going to wither up and die on you very quickly, so you have plenty of time to whack some water on them again. Think of it, they're actually a grass essentially, and you don't need to water most grasses on a constant basis to keep them alive, but yes, they will die eventually if you don't give them any care at all. Now when I planted mine, I actually wound up with sufficient. I put into two separate pots. This is actually the smaller of the two that I did. I've recently unpotted and broken apart my larger one to basically see what I actually got out of it, and basically just to see how it looks once you pull it apart. Plus I also did a couple of experiments with it just to see just how resilient it is and how easy it is to grow back as well. So here are the biggest, healthiest stalks that I've basically pulled out, and I've stuck them back into the original pot with a brand new potting mix until I figure out what I want to do with them and spread them out into their own larger pots. Here's a heap of other ones that I have put into smaller pots temporarily, and once again until I figure out what I'm going to do with them. And then a heap that I've basically put into a bucket of water to keep them alive. Now like many plants, they will root in water and they will stay alive in water for quite a period of time, although that's not where you want to keep them permanently. You do need to make sure that you change that water regularly though. I have noticed, being a person who tends to forget about things quite regularly, that water will get slimy and very smelly in a faster period than I've noticed on any of the other plants that I've forgotten about as well. So obviously something there really doesn't like that water. We're getting stale, so make sure you do change it regularly, otherwise you're going to wind up with problems. So looking here, this is an example of how it actually propagates. It slowly sort of creates extra shoots off, and you can see the small one coming off here. You can also see it's thickening out here as well. If I pull that away, I'll probably find that there's another bit slowly working its way out there also. So just rip that bit off, and that's verification, yes. So that's another one growing there. So as I mentioned before, I broke up my original plant, and I actually thought to myself, well, I wonder what's going to happen with the root ball. So I decided to stick that back in some dirt, give it some water and see what happens, and that started growing back too. So I'll show you that one. So here's that root ball after a bit of time and a little bit of water, growing itself back. So that's a whole new crop of lemongrass just coming from the root ball that had been annihilated. And just to see how much it can grow back from, some of the one that I used had a really nice little root left on it, so I put that in some water to see whether or not it would grow back and what would happen, and this is the result from that. So I chopped some lemongrass off to use in a recipe, and I saw that I had some good roots already, so I thought I'll stick that in some water and see what happens for an experiment. And as you can see, it's actually growing back. Nice shoot on the top, and there's another shoot pushing through it there as well. So as you can see, it is a very, very resilient plant. So if you actually get it started, it is quite simple to keep going with it. So there you have it. With a very small amount of effort and some time, you can grow yourself a pretty much unlimited amount of lemongrass, to the point that you will be wondering what the heck to do with it all. So hopefully that's been useful to you. Please like, subscribe and share, and catch you next time.